Imagine a pathway that once existed yet vanished almost entirely from human memory. A corridor carved not only through geography but through the very structures of thought and perception. Picture a route that linked two worlds so radically different, conventional history deems their connection impossible. One was a civilization of meticulous engineering, the other harmonized instinct with nature. What allowed these impossible worlds to exchange ideas, materials, and subtle cognitive patterns? Why has this connection been lost, yet encoded in hidden signals that still ripple through our understanding? At the intersection of archaeology, neuropsychology, and systems theory lies this lost route. Its existence challenges the limits of what we think is historically possible. The notion of a pathway is itself a metaphor, a conduit, a network, a channel, through which energy, information, and adaptation flow. In neuroscience, we understand pathways as networks of neurons transmitting electrical signals. In society, trade routes, diplomatic channels, and migratory paths act as similar conduits, transmitting culture, knowledge, and adaptive strategies. This lost route was both literal and metaphorical, linking territories and cognitive systems. Systems previously assumed incompatible. Why does this matter? It forces us to rethink how societies evolve, how information propagates, and how humans collectively navigate the unknown. If the impossibility was an artifact of our assumptions, the real lesson is about perception. Humans are pattern-seeking organisms. Our brains attempt to reconcile incomplete data, often at the cost of erasing complex networks that do not conform to our expectations. Historical narratives often prune the improbable, leaving a linear story that satisfies comfort. This route challenges that comfort. History, like the mind, is not always linear. Adaptation can occur through unexpected channels, and resilience emerges from tenuous connections. Archaeological evidence, fragmentary as it may be, begins to reveal traces of this corridor. Pottery shards sharing chemical compositions with distant sources. Architectural motifs echoing designs from regions supposedly unlinked. Linguistic structures bearing uncanny resemblances across vast distances. These signals, like synaptic firings, are faint yet persistent, suggesting information traveled along routes that defied traditional historical mapping. In neuropsychological terms, this is akin to observing distant neural networks firing in synchrony. A reminder that connectivity does not always follow obvious paths. Systems often find routes that are hidden, indirect, or counterintuitive. Consider the implications for collective behavior. Societies are complex systems, dynamically balancing internal coherence with external pressures. Stressors, environmental, social, or existential, act on these systems. Much like neurotransmitters on the brain, they induce adaptations, trigger new connections, and sometimes erase old pathways. The lost route may have emerged because both civilizations face similar pressures. Resource scarcity, climatic fluctuations, or internal political stress. When faced with such challenges, the energy of a system redistributes. In one society, innovations in agriculture or engineering. In another, shifts in ritual, communication, or mobility. The root was a manifestation of complex systems under stress self-organizing, finding unexpected solutions that maximize survival and cognitive efficiency. The philosophical dimension of this connection cannot be overstated. To perceive the lost root is to confront the limitations of linear causality in history. It forces a reconsideration of time, influence, and agency. Were the two civilizations aware of each other's existence in a direct sense? Or were they linked through emergent subconscious exchanges of technique and trade? Neuropsychology provides a compelling metaphor. The brain is capable of parallel processing, integrating inputs from disparate sources into coherent behavior. Societies may have integrated knowledge from distant systems without direct recognition, producing adaptations that seem remarkable, even magical, from a linear historical narrative. One of the most striking elements is the evidence of cognitive and technological resonance. Metallurgical techniques developed in one region appear in distant settlements with subtle modifications, as if the knowledge itself was translating through a complex adaptive filter. Agricultural strategies, astronomical observations, and ritualistic symbolism exhibit cross-pollination, analogous to observing two neural circuits adopting similar firing patterns. Because they are exposed to the same input conditions, even without direct synaptic linkage, The root acted as a medium through which not only material goods but cognitive frameworks traveled. It was a hidden architecture of human thought, connecting minds across vast distances. Yet, as with many adaptive systems, the path did not survive indefinitely. Stressors change. Connectivity shifts. Empires rise and fall, environmental conditions fluctuate. The lost root faded, leaving behind only signals and artifacts, myths, and cultural parallels. This disappearance is not merely a failure of preservation, but a feature of systemic adaptation. The root fulfilled its function during a period of intense need and then dissolved. From a psychological perspective, this is reminiscent of pruning in neural networks, where synapses not reinforced by activity are eliminated to increase efficiency. History, like the brain, optimizes connectivity based on function, often erasing what is no longer immediately useful but leaving faint traces. One might ask, what does this tell us about perception itself? How often do we, as modern observers, assume impossibility based on incomplete information? The lost root invites a reconsideration of epistemic humility. Human cognition tends to favor parsimonious narratives, but complex systems operate in ways that are nonlinear, distributed, and emergent. Recognizing these patterns requires patience, observation, and a willingness to entertain paradox. It challenges the observer to balance skepticism with openness, to see signals that are faint, asynchronous, or counterintuitive. If we map this metaphor onto contemporary human behavior, the implications are profound. Consider globalization and digital networks. Just as the lost root connected civilizations in ways not obvious, current networks link minds, markets, and ecosystems. Stressors, climatic, political, psychological, induce adaptations in unexpected ways. Ancient roots channeled energy and information. Modern networks distribute cognitive, social, and technological influence. Connectivity is often invisible, adaptive, and emergent. Understanding requires a systems perspective, tracing signals through indirect evidence. Historical impossibility reflects cognitive limitation, not reality. Here is the twist. The fragility we perceive, the root's apparent disappearance, was not weakness. It was resilience. Like a neural network silencing pathways to prevent overload, societies preserve the root's adaptive function. Vulnerability in one dimension can be protective in another, mirrored in neurobiology and historical systems. The vanished road, the lost bridge, exemplifies how seeming absence encodes hidden strength, preserving systemic coherence. Archaeological investigations reveal faint markers, remote trails, inscriptions referencing distant mythologies, and unique artifacts. Each piece, analyzed through an interdisciplinary lens, hints at the broader architecture of connection. The root was never a simple line on a map, but a dynamic network, a flux of interactions. It was an emergent attractor, a pattern that self-organized and adapted, fading when no longer optimal. Psychologically, this narrative challenges how we conceive of historical causality. Influence doesn't require immediate recognition. Knowledge, practices, and strategies propagate subtly, encoded in objects, rituals, or shared problem-solving methods. Human societies are distributed cognition systems, and pathways like this are conduits for collective intelligence. Just as neurons communicate via electrical signals, societies exchange adaptive strategies modulated by environment. Philosophically, the implications are equally rich. The lost root invites reflection on the nature of possibility itself. What we consider impossible may be merely hidden, mediated through complex adaptive networks. History, like perception, is constrained by what we notice. The root reminds us impossibility is provisional. In recognizing faint traces, we confront how much of reality is accessible only through indirect signals. In modern terms, this root functions as a metaphor for resilience, adaptation, and hidden architecture of human systems. It reminds us that cognitive and social networks are layered, dynamic, and often invisible. It challenges us to think beyond linear causality, to detect faint signals, and interpret complexity with humility. Ancient civilizations understood principles modern systems science is only beginning to formalize. Distributed cognition, emergent behavior. Finally, the enduring question: if such a connection was possible between civilizations deemed incompatible, what other links exist today? How many networks of influence, innovation, and adaptation go unnoticed, not because they are weak, but our perception? The lost root teaches us that the margins of possibility are wider than we assume, that systemic strength often hides in subtlety. History, like the mind, thrives on complex interconnected patterns that are easy to overlook but impossible to ignore once perceived. As we reflect on this ancient pathway, it becomes clear that the journey is more than a tale of geography or artifacts. It is a meditation on the nature of connection itself, a lesson in how societies adapt, reorganize, and preserve function. It is an invitation to reconsider the boundaries of the possible, to observe faint signals with care and embrace paradox. The lost root is not just a historical curiosity. It is a framework for understanding human resilience and creativity. So, next time you consider impossibility, pause. Look for the faint signals, the subtle patterns, the hidden networks. Recognize that what seems lost may still exert influence, shaping adaptation and perception in ways we are only beginning to understand. The lost root, once a literal connector, now exists as a cognitive and philosophical model, a reminder that history is a network. Perception is layered, and human potential often travels along paths invisible to the untrained eye. It encourages us to embrace complexity, to trace indirect connections, and to understand that resilience often manifests in subtle ways. If you found this journey into the lost connections enlightening, leave a comment sharing your thoughts on other impossible links. Like this video if it challenged the way you think about historical causality and collective adaptation. Subscribe to Pastlens for more explorations into the hidden architectures of civilizations, the subtle rhythms of human behavior, and the metaphors that connect history, science, and the mind. Let's continue tracing these unseen pathways together. And perhaps in doing so, we'll uncover the hidden roots that still shape the world today.